Before we hear from our speaker about the work that Green Faith is doing, we have some updates about divesting our pension plans here in North Carolina, the summer of heat, and North Carolina specific issues and actions. So we'll ask Don to start with divesting from pension plans, please.
Thank you, Marcia. I'm going to talk about a little bit about our campaign right here in North Carolina, and this is particularly of interest, I think, to anybody who is a participant in the state pension fund, particularly the teachers and state employees retirement system. So we're currently working on a divestment of fossil fuel holdings from this enormous pension fund, which altogether is now, I just learned, more than has a market value of about $150 billion. So it's very substantial. And as you know, any state employees will depend upon that, or many state employees, a large number, probably tens of thousands in this case or more, will depend upon the performance of that pension fund for their retirement, hopefully a secure one. It has been plagued by problems of misgovernance, but that's something that's not our primary focus, but we think we'll get to that, which is about the holding of fossil fuels. I did a little bit of analysis earlier today, and I found out that one of the major holdings is something called the Russell 1000 Index. Maybe some of you have heard of it. In it, it holds about 8% of its holdings are, almost 9% are in fossil fuel companies like ExxonMobil and many other bad actors. So we want to get this money, these investments out of our state pension funds so that we can live a more flourishing future, and that our kids can, and grandkids. If you're interested in joining what we're doing, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow evening, Wednesday, June 26th at 6 p.m. It's a Zoom meeting, so I'm going to put that in chat, the Zoom link, and please join us if you have time and are at all interested in this. Please join us whether you're a recipient of in the state pension fund or a participant or not. Because we think this is a broader importance to getting dirty fossil money out of our retirement systems. Thanks a lot, and I'll pass it to Rosemarie.
You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I am one of the folks in that pension fund, so I'm looking forward to what we can do together around that. So I want to share some, and we've talked about it a little before for those of you that have been here, which is about the summer of heat on Wall Street. And this is a coalition that put this together, and Third Act is part of that coalition. So we are really, the group is really heightening our efforts to call out the banks, particularly Citibank, about their investments in the fossil fuels. And this has been going on for a while. It's not brand new, but this is a real concerted effort. So there are a lot of folks from the coalition that are in New York City now, and they are doing protests, some nonviolent direct actions. We understand the last number I heard was about 160 of our folks have gone to jail to call, to really get attention on this and let them know how serious we believe that this is, and they need to stop doing this work. The goals of this are several. One is to really turn up the heat on the financial institutions. So some banks, largely banks, but there are also insurance companies and others that are involved in this same sort of behavior. So the second thing is to try to disrupt business as usual. and use the nonviolent direct action strategies and civil disobedience. And so if you happen to see any of the videos of it, people are literally blocking the entrances to the banks, and folks can't get to work, and people can't come in to do their bank business. And we really want to raise visibility of the role of these institutions in the climate crisis. A lot of time, and I didn't in the beginning really understand that relationship between banks and other institutions and really driving the fossil fuel investments. And we want to grow our movement. So we're being very public about this and hoping other people will join us and get involved in the whole work of Third Act. Bill McKibben wrote sort of a blog that introduces the summer of heat. And he said in that, if the weather's going to be sizzling, then we need to be on fire. And I think that's a good way to think about it. I also just wanted to point out at one example of where we are in terms of financing is that the Nature Journal projected that the world economy will see an income reduction by about 19%, and globally, the annual damage is estimated to be $38 trillion by 2050. So what this means to us is that it's actually not in the bank's best interest to continue to invest in something that is, ruining the climate, but also not good overall economically. So we are actually in North Carolina. There's, I should mention, so during this time of protest in New York, there are groups around the country, groups like ours, are doing what's called distributed actions. So we're doing things here in our home state that will amplify and call attention to what's going on in New York City. So for the Triad, so some of us are from the Triad, we're going to hold a climate cafe. We are almost ready to lock down the date and place, but we will share that information with you when we have it. We're going to have, it's interesting, and Karen is teaching us a lot about how we tell this story about climate change and about what people can do about it. I think somebody here mentioned that it can get really discouraging and feel like we just can't make any progress. But she showed us how we can tell this story and ending with what people can do. So we're working with that idea to do a presentation, and it's, say the word again for me, Marcia. Castoria, is that right?
Cantastoria.
Cathastoria. Yeah, so it's a way of telling the story using art and visuals and a presentation. So that will be part of the Climate Cafe. And it gives participants an opportunity to do something right away. So we'll have various things that people can take part in. And then just getting to know each other, because in our community, the environmental groups haven't really worked together. They're each doing their own work, and we think we'll be much more powerful if we can bring a coalition together here. And then we have, thank you, the Triangle, Raleigh and Durham are still working out the details. So as it says, stay tuned. We'll give you some information. And this is our Western North Carolina group. And there are several things going on in Asheville that week, the Elder Week. So July 9th, they're doing the Climate Cafe. And on July 11th, the Happy Hour. These are really great chances to get to know each other and start working together. And on Friday, a Stop Funding Fossil Fuels Action at Pritchard Park in Asheville. And there'll be speakers and music and performance by Playback Theater. So again, that's a great way to both get out the message, be involved, and really strengthen our local groups. All right, well, I will pass it to Karen Bearden.
Howdy, y'all. Hope you all are drinking lots of water and taking care of yourself in this extreme heat we're having in June. It's not even August yet, golly. As I mentioned earlier, I'm part of the Democratized Energy group, so I will talk to you about those types of things. You can still send comments on the proposed carbon plan using a link that I will include in the chat. And I will also include a good article by Elizabeth Oots. Groups urge North Carolina regulators to push Duke Energy on solar and wind. Pump the brakes on new gas because they have way too much new gas they want to put into this. I will also include a couple months ago, we had the awesome Nancy LaPlaca from Boone area, and she spoke to us. And she has been holding 3 trainings that they were third excellent PUC Public Utility Commission leadership training series. And all of those have been completed now. And I will include the recording to all of those trainings that were really excellent. And you've heard me talk about the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Probably every time I speak, I talk about that because I'm also with 350. I'm the coordinator of 350 Triangle, so my work has been involved with that for many years now. And so, very upsetting news that you might have heard about. But a couple weeks ago, after MVP submitted their one-day request for in-service permission to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Late the following day, FERC actually authorized them to go ahead and commence the service, and that was on Tuesday, and by Friday, it was in service. And this is even though there are so many violations and so many questions unanswered, and this shouldn't be happening because the climate emergency that you know that we're all in. I will include really powerful statements from Power, 7 Directions, App Voices, and West Virginia Rivers Coalition, and they're all frontline communities that have been fighting this for 10 years. Part of Russell's comment that I really love, our fight is not over. We have 303 miles of failing pipes with at least 130 identified anomalies, pumping methane gas through our communities, and we are being targeted by new projects like Southgate and Southeast Supply Enhancement Project. We deserve better, and we are never going to stop demanding better. That's Russell Chisholm from the Awesome Powers Coalition. I will also include an article by Deborah Kushner about the MVP called "The Time Bomb is Detonated," and also the Stop MVP toolkit with actions you can still take. And mentioned in Russell's comment, and you've heard me talk about this also, unfortunately, there's a proposed Williams Transco Southeast Supply Enhancement Project that will be impacting us in North Carolina and Virginia. So I will include a petition to sign and also a link with more information. They're having scoping hearings right now, and the first one was last night in Lexington. There's another one tonight in Chatham, Virginia. And then there's also time to still make comments on Duke Energy's 2 proposed gas plants. They've already had the public hearings for the Marshall plant near Charlotte and the one in Roxborough area. But there's still time for you to make comments. And again, I'll put a lot of links in there after I finish speaking. And then Jason Torian from Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League was our guest speaker back in February, talking about the Mariah Energy Center in Person County. Just wanted to let you know, the Department of Air Quality is holding a public hearing on the Mariah Energy Center draft air permit on August 1st from 6 to 9 in Henderson, North Carolina, and I'll share more information in the chat also. And I think that's a lot right now. That's a lot I gave you. Sorry about that. But now it's time for our awesome speaker. Yay. Dr. Reverend Amy Brooks Paradise is the North American organizer for Green Faith, And Amy, I was looking back on it. It's been a while since we've known each other. And I was like, what was that group that we were involved with? And again, this is my work with 350 way back when. And I found it was in 2018 when I first got some emails from you. And the group was like with the North Carolina Climate March. And then we switched to Climate Jobs and Justice Coalition. And we kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. But that's when I first met Amy. So Amy is a Unitarian Universalist minister working on climate finance and Green Faith Circle development. She is a 2010 Green Faith Fellow and previously served as pastor at the UU congregations. She serves on the board of the UU Justice Ministry in North Carolina and as the board president of the Mecklenburg Metropolitan Interfaith Network. And as a Green America supporter too, Amy's done some awesome webinars about some stuff she's going to be talking about, the finance stuff. So thank you, Amy.
Hey there, everybody. Whew, that was a whole lot. And I just love hearing about everything that Third Act is doing. I think there's so much resonance between what Green Faith and Third Act are doing. And I have to say that I've been delighted to work with Jerome at 350 for many years. And we just had a Third Act Green Faith 350 event not too long ago right here in Charlotte, which was super fun. So if you'll allow me, I would like to just take a little step back and give you all maybe some context for what I do before I dig into sort of what's happening now. And I'm not talented enough to show slides and read like the points I want to make. So you'll just have to forgive me. I'm going to be another talking head for most of this. But I wanted to start out, for Green Faith, we're focused on the faith communities. And I thought I would start by reading this quote, which I'm sure you've all read before, by James Speth. And he writes, "I used to think that top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that 30 years of good science could address these problems. I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a cultural and spiritual transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that." Well, when you talk about spiritual transformation, my, whole body will just kind of light up because I think that's what people of faith are all about. We at Green Faith have been working for more than 30 years and probably about, 7 or 8, realized that all the great things that faith communities were doing, like putting solar panels on the roofs of their congregations or planting community gardens or assessing their carbon footprint, were not enough. And so we really worked hard to transition the organization away from that and into organizing and activism. So, we come from this foundation that we are in a spiritual crisis, that as people of faith, or even not as people of faith, we are disconnected from the earth and too often from each other. In many ways, I think we've lost a spiritual foundation, and too many of us are suffering either from apathy or greed or fear. So we at Green Faith really feel like, as people of faith, we need to respond. There are so many great things that faith communities can bring to this conversation. First of all, we have spiritual teachings. And if you look at spiritual teachings, and I have a whole bunch, if I could show you my slide presentation, I could give you 50 from all the different traditions that talk about what our role is in terms of taking care of the earth, of being, what's the word I want? Humble and not greedy. I don't know what the right word for that is. There's just so many scriptural teachings that tell us how we are to be as human beings. And we can go beyond the sort of 5 major religions and look at what the indigenous people have taught for 10,000 years. There's so much there. We also have a great reservoir of spiritual practices like prayer, meditation, singing, preaching, that really help, even in direct action, be powerful. We also have built-in community. I mean, communities of faith are groups of people that are already formed. So how do we mobilize those? Those communities also have a lot of resources. Many of them have buildings. Some of them have land. Some of them even have some money. Although after COVID, it seems like it's less and less. It's a rough time for them. But still, how do we mobilize those resources? And we talk a lot about nonviolent direct action, and we have to note that the historical precedents of that are communities of faith, whether you're talking about Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., there are many folks who really have mobilized people of faith around nonviolent direct action by grounding people in their faith. And so we think it's really important for people of faith to be involved. And of course, people of faith like to deal in hope. And I heard someone talk about not feeling very hopeful. I really do believe that our spiritual practices and our communities of faith can help us have that hope. Or as one of the scriptures says, belief in things that are unseen. So as an organization, we have a mission statement that I'll drop here. And we also have some values that we try to espouse, like being bold for good and grounded in justice, compassionate by nature, things like that. But we have 3 places that we really kind of focus in on, 3 demands. We want to mobilize to stop fossil fuel infrastructure and financing. We want to mobilize for a just transition, particularly for those who have been left out. And we want to make sure that the big polluters pay. And so the way we do that is both globally and locally. So I'm going to just talk briefly about globally. So we work with frontline communities in Africa, Latin America, and Asia primarily. And these are communities whose resources are continuously impacted by colonial capitalism. And I'm assuming most of you understand what that is, but basically, you know, a lot of white people colonized a lot of people of color, and we introduced the capitalist system, and now they're wrestling with that because they're even fighting with themselves. Like, what does it mean to develop? We should be able to like do fossil fuels like they did. Versus the communities are saying, no, 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 that's not the way to go. It's destroying our local communities. So we work a lot with folks around issues like the building of pipelines and deforestation. Those are the 2 big ones that we focus on. And so the way that really breaks down is either supporting those local fights against fossil fuels and deforestation, or, especially here in the US, identifying and targeting the financial institutions that support these projects. And as a quote first world country that lives a better life or higher up on the, I don't know, food chain or the whatever chain you want to look at, I mean, our system is really high intensity for using these resources. We have, generally speaking, a lot more money. And so that is how I personally really kind of honed in on what can I do as a first world white person who has a lot of resources. And that's how, you know, living in Charlotte, coming to something like Bank of America, it's like, Bank of America funds the East African crude oil pipeline, for example, where we have Circle members right now. Circles are groups of people who are doing the fight. Circle members in Tanzania right now who are being continuously harassed. We're in our 3rd month now by police for their activities. They're being asked to go back to the police station a couple of times a week. If you have to travel 50 kilometers to get there, this is a hardship. So we've been kind of pouring resources into supporting what we call the Tanzania 10, and also highlighting this with the banks that are supporting this. There's a 3rd rung on that triangle. Total Energy is the major group that's putting in the East African crude oil pipeline. So our French contingent is fighting them because it's a French community, I mean, a French business. So globally, that's how we try to make these connections. And then if we want to focus more here in the United States, we really want to be in solidarity with the most marginalized communities. So we've been working with LNG in the Gulf South. We work here locally with Power and 7 Directions of Service. And really try to focus on helping people understand that, you know, it is not just, it is not right, it is not faithful to create sacrifice zones. And so that is some of the sort of grounding for what we do. I could say a lot more about that, but I only have probably 3 minutes left, so, or maybe 4. So let me move to some of the campaigns that we've been doing. We've probably for over a year now been doing what we call Earth Witness Wednesdays, which is what I love to call an easy and replicable action where you just show up at a bank and you have a prayer and sing some songs and maybe make a statement about why we're there. We love to hold silence 1 second for every $1 billion that the bank has spent since 2015 and the Paris Climate Accords. And then we roll up our signs and we go to lunch. So we've probably been doing that for about a year at various bank sites here in Charlotte. We have also been doing the AGM, and we do that as much as we can in partnership with other organizations like yourself. And we try to bring that faith flair to it and engage people of faith to join us and build power here around that issue. Where we are right now, we are also partnering with the Citibank campaign, with Stop the Money Pipeline, and all of you who are members of that to engage with Summer of Heat. There is a Faith Week, which we're excited to say is bringing out a lot of the Gulf South people. We have a big Gulf South contingent coming back up. That will be beginning the last week in July and going, I think, to August 1st. I'm not quite sure how the dates go. And True Confessions here, I am off in July. We are taking our daughter, who's adopted from China, back home to do a heritage tour. So I'm not as up on the Faith Week as I wish I was, or I would be if I was going to be around for that. But Chelsea McMillan in New York City is leading that work. So we're going to be having a big contingent there for that. And we're just about to launch. I don't have the link yet, but I'd love to share it with you probably by tomorrow, where we're going to launch a faith letter, inviting people of faith to sign on as individuals, as faith leaders, or as congregations. And of course, we are looking especially for those institutions that are banking with Citibank. And like yourselves, you know, we feel like focusing in on these financial institutions is really important. And we want to join with other groups that are doing that because, as someone mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of groups doing different things. So as much as possible, trying to coalesce our efforts, which makes us look and actually are more powerful. So that's one piece we have going on this summer. So we'll be looking for sign-ons and asking to identify Citibank users. There may be a visit to Citibank with some people of faith, and we're also going to do a roundtable in August to continue to put pressure on them by having folks go in and either pose as Citibank potential customers, or if they are really Citibank customers, to say, hey, we're really uncomfortable with what's going on. Why are you doing this? This is part of a larger campaign that we have been building. We're almost ready to launch. The reason that we haven't is we're a little nervous about this fall's election and whether folks are really going to jump on that bandwagon right now, or if we should wait until January. But the larger climate finance campaign is working with different denominations to engage their congregations in taking steps that focus on banks in general, not just Citibank. This would include assessing where you're doing your banking and consider moving, certainly going in and talking with your local person about what you're concerned about as a person of faith. We're going to do a letter writing campaign. We'll do a call-in day, and we'll do an action day. And it may be that we do that from January to April, because as we all know, AGM is April is the AGM season, and that might be a good time to do an action. But if we do it earlier, I'd be happy to let you know. Because of the voting, the last piece that we have going on is we're going to do a faith and climate action guide, helping people focus on issues in the state of North Carolina, because it's a swing state, that people could be paying attention to. And if you have issues that you think should be highlighted and that people of faith should know about, please reach out to me. I've been researching and I have several things that I'm looking at, but I want to be able to give people a guide that really has some good information about the issues that are on the table, like wood pellets and Duke. We are going to share that out to congregations in North Carolina. The second piece that we're doing is inviting congregations to partner with us to do a town hall, if they are the kind of congregation that does that. I think that generally tends to be more African-American congregations, so we're working with Blueprint and some other groups to kind of identify key congregations that want to do a town hall. And finally, we're planning to do a call-in series of weeks leading up to the election with the Environmental Voter Project. So we're looking for folks who want to come and phone bank with us. And they focus primarily on low propensity voters that they've identified, care about the environment. And so we really want to turn, as one of my funders said, I want to turn purple North Carolina green. So help us do that. We would love to have you participate with us. And I will give you one pretty image that you can look at before I stop talking, just to give you a flavor of why I think faith actions are so beautiful and so important. This is actually from last fall. Although we've had some really beautiful actions since then with Seven Directions and the United Methodist Church that came out for AGM. But this was last November, and this is an article that got published here in the local African-American newspaper. And I invite you to look at the pictures and read the article. And that's what I've got for today. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy. Yes, lots of kudos. So if for everyone who would like to ask Amy a question, I'm sure we have some. Please use your reaction button on the bottom and to raise your hand. Or if you're, we might not see you because we've got a couple of pages here, but let's go ahead and open it up for questions for Amy.
I have a couple questions about,
Marshall.
AGM, is that the general meeting? Is that what you mean? Can you give a little more detail about
Yes,
that?
I'm so sorry. I'm doing what you should never do, which is use acronyms. It stands for Annual General Meeting, and every bank and major financial institution has one every year, and they seem to do them in late April or early May, almost across the board.
Okay. And the other question that I had is, when you're talking about the Faith Week, is that in New York or?
Yes, it's in New York. So we're partnering with the Summer of Heat and doing a week, just like the Elders Action did a week, and probably you guys have done a week. I mean, everybody, we've got people lined up to do weeks, right? So that's our week.
And so is there a city bank in Charlotte? We don't have one in Greensboro.
There is not really any city banks here in Charlotte that I know of. I haven't done a real search for that, but I think they tend to be very concentrated in the Northeast. It's really interesting to ask, like Google and see where banks are. Wells Fargo's, more on the West Coast, although there's a lot here too. In fact, somebody once said to me that the real work of Wells Fargo happens in Charlotte, and the headquarters that's there is kind of this like, I don't know, flagship thing, but that a lot of the work happens here in Charlotte. Interesting story. Karen, when we were doing the action with Seven Directions and Power, and you got, all sorts of groups back on May 8th for our next to last, it turned out, Earth Witness Wednesday. At the very same day, there was a golf tournament sponsored by Wells Fargo happening down in South Charlotte. And one of my volunteers, who's usually with us at the actions, like, I can't come, I'm volunteering at the golf thing. And she said, I overheard some bystanders talking about they said something like, yeah, did you hear? There were all these people outside of Wells Fargo talking about some pipeline. Do you know what that's about? And it was both very cool that they knew we were doing it, and also really sad that they really have no idea the damage the company they work for is doing. They had no idea, like, oh, they're investing in this horrible pipeline. So I thought it was a really interesting piece of information.
My voice is my password. Please verify.
Karen?
That was a totally awesome event. And Charlotte, on May 8th, that my husband and I went to. Yay, it was so great to see you again, Amy. So can you tell us a little bit more about the town hall that you mentioned and also your call-in day? And I can imagine that John might want to connect with you. John, it might be fun to connect with Green Faith with the election work that they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, because the election is happening, we wanted to think of a couple of key things that we could do. We're not a voter organization. There are hundreds of organizations out there doing voting work year round, every year. So what we thought we might do would be to partner with a couple of organizations and try to bring some resources and energy to bear rather than trying to create like a totally new thing. So the two things that seemed like they would be the most sort of sympathetic to our base was to focus on congregations that tend to do town halls. So in the African American church, there's a long tradition of having candidates come and speak at church. That tends to be less true at white churches. I'm not saying it never happens, but we tend to like to keep our religion and politics really separate. But the Black church recognizes how important it is to know what your elected officials are doing, and they like to have town halls. So we're trying to identify congregations that either already are planning town halls or would like to plan one and need a little boost. So we have some resources to help with that. So I'm trying to identify some congregations that want to do this with us. And the idea for that would be to, help make that happen and then make sure that there's always someone at that town hall that's going to ask a few key questions, like, if you were going to be governor, how big a percentage of the budget would you devote to climate change and environmental justice issues and making sure that we're resilient in the face of climate change? Please be specific. Or, those kinds of things, like formulating. I have several questions formulated. We're going to work on some more. What do you think about the Duke Carbon Plan, and why aren't you holding the commission accountable? So on and so forth. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is we're partnering with the Environmental Voter Project that already has a whole cadre and list of people that they've identified that care about the environment, but don't always show up to all of the elections. Low propensity voters tend to skip most of the elections. They do tend to show up for the national ones, but I mean, the big ones, every 4 years. So they have this list, and we're going to partner with them to reach out and make sure those people are getting out and help them know what the issues are that would motivate them, because they do care about the environment. And so those dates, the town halls would be scattered anytime from, I don't know, August, September, or maybe September, October. And then the calling, we're looking at the 5 weeks before the election. So mostly in October, maybe late September. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned call-in day. I used that language more for the larger climate finance campaign, and we haven't set that yet because we're trying to assess whether we just need to wait until January to launch that. We're doing a digital action as part of Summer of Heat. People could get involved with that, which would be signing the letter, and maybe we'll do a script for a call-in day the evening of August 1st. So the big action in New York is happening on August 1st at 4 p.m. And so we might host a call-in on that day. So that's also coming, and I can send you the links as soon as I have them. And I see Elizabeth has her hand up.
And that's awesome. If I could follow up. So you mentioned that some of the Gulf Coast folks are going to be coming back up for the faith, because I know there's 200 of them right now in New York City, because this week is focusing on them. And so that's cool that they're going to be coming back. So yay.
Yeah, they will. I don't know if it's all the same. I don't know if it's the same people or different people, but there's a whole coalition call that's happening with them right now. I mean, ongoing to develop that, because there's so much faith resonance for them. They may or may define it differently in some cases, but there are also a lot of Indigenous people who became Christian, and so they also want that piece of their identity to be part of the effort.
Right. I think of Sharon Levine. Exactly.
Yeah, she's coming up.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Yay. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay,
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth?
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for your presentation and your passion. I was wondering how your organization connects with other churches. Do you have a roster of thousands in North Carolina? And would a church get a hold of you at greenfaith.org if they want to be part of your group?
So, in North Carolina, we do not have a roster of thousands. I wish we did. I have been pulled back and forth between local work and national work all the time I've worked at Green Faith. But I think we're at a place where we would really like to develop the local work. You know, the South is such a rich set of faith communities, and Charlotte in particular just has so much diversity. So I've kind of focused in on Charlotte. I mean, I've had contact with other groups that are, working with other faith communities, and we are always so happy for those faith communities to join us, even as they continue to do the local work, whether it's the, Asheville group or the Triangle group. Those are the two that I know the most about. And we've done things with them in the past, but we just welcome people joining with us. I mean, I think whatever someone said earlier about not, being too scattered. Green Faith has, a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities, and we just would love to have people of faith just join us when they feel like they can, that meets their goals. We're going to probably be pulling out some training stuff in the new year. We have our own take on that. I think a lot of our theories of change are pretty resonant, so that's not a big reach. I think what Green Faith offers is kind of that connectivity across the faith traditions. I've done work with so many different faith traditions, and they all often talk about, well, we have this program in our, Methodist church, and we have this program in our Presbyterian church, and they're all great, but they often do not focus on advocacy and direct action. And they don't really have much of an idea of what people beyond their congregation's doors are doing. And I think the gift that Green Faith brings is, let me help you connect and be more powerful, because we're, building those relationships, if that makes sense. So I would love to talk to anybody about that. I'll drop my email here. Oh, yeah, I'm just looking at the link somebody dropped. So you got me scolding the people at Vanguard.
That was me. Yeah, that was your great article in Common Dreams last year.
Yeah. And then, and that was super fun. Just, standing up and disrupting the meeting. The other thing is we had a really great op-ed that the Charlotte Post also printed. I don't know if I can find that for you. It came out right before the AGM season. I'll see if I can find that and drop it. Yes, I see a hand.
It's me again. I just was, when I saw that, so are you part of like the Earthquakers, or are you involved with them? When I saw the Vanguard, is that something?
Yeah. So yeah, we do some work with Earthquaker Action Team. Lena Blount up in Pennsylvania, we've done some work together. They're on one of our teams consulting on the finance campaign. They focus specifically on Vanguard. And so an opportunity arose, and they were looking, they asked Green Faith if we'd be willing to do that action. And so we did. So a bunch of us went out there to do that action. It was super fun.
Thank you.
So, any other
I'll
questions?
get the links when I have them. They're coming soon. Sorry, I don't have them for tonight.
That's okay. We send a follow-up after this roundtable, so we can include those links in it.
Are you done at 6:30?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take 30 seconds. Another thing that we've been developing with Michael Richardson at Third Act in New York and Green America is a Move Your Money curriculum. We're hoping that's going to launch at the end of August. We've been working on it since last year. And this is an opportunity for people who, in addition to putting pressure on financial institutions, actually want to move their money. And it's a 12-week curriculum. It's almost ready to launch. You can do it at your own speed with your community. And again, it's an opportunity to build circles or groups that, then maybe want to continue to get involved. But sometimes it's, people want to just like focus on something that's a little bit more personal or something they feel like they have control over, which is where's my money? So that's going to be coming.
Great.
Align your money with your values.
Yeah, it looks like Gene has his hand up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a quick question regarding that. I think had a similar conversation with Don by email before. And, so when all this came up and I'm looking at the banks, I mean, basically most major banks have these investments. And the problem with moving your money is trying to figure out whether you've actually done anything when you move your money. And while it's, using very small local savings and loans and whatever may be one option, that may not be a good option for other reasons, for a variety of reasons. So the problem seems to be that pretty much every large bank you look at, and when I did at least some cursory analysis, have these investments in these areas because that's what they do. They're going where the money is, where they can make money, basically. So focusing what the reason city is so large is because they've got a much larger portfolio, and on a ratio basis, I'm not even sure it's that different for some of the smaller regional banks and so on. So I guess my question is, how to address this confusion, frankly, and what are good alternatives to actually managing that, and also, how to really make a difference in that context. Obviously, driving and having large investors force banks to make substantial changes is what is going to really move the needle. Someone with, 10,000, 100,000, even a million, moving that money around, frankly, doesn't have any real impact on the bank and its ability to do business and its interests. So my question is, where do you get the most bang for your buck in the efforts that you're moving forward with? Thanks.
Great. So I agree with you that individuals moving their money is not the most effective strategy. I think you get the biggest bang for your buck bringing people together and doing public action. That's what Green Faith really focuses on. But we have to realize that, especially when we're talking about people of faith, that's not always a primary thing for them, even though I cited the history of faith communities doing that. We can see that those have not been as often or as strong as we would like over time. I mean, our last really big one was the civil rights movement. And how many decades ago was that? Oh, sorry. My dogs are singing. So I agree with you that doing the direct action is really important. However, I do think as a tactic, moving money can possibly be useful. And here's why. If you start talking to people of faith in particular, but people of moral conscience, it can be anybody, does how you spend your money align with your values? I mean, people want to have integrity. People want to feel good about the choices they make. And so I see this conversation and some of that action possibly being a tactic that hooks people in and gets them started thinking about what's going on. So they may go ahead and move their money or they may not, but you're using it as a way to get into people's consciousness and engage them in, sorry, honey, I'm on a call. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's beautiful. I'll talk to you after. Sorry, my 15-year-old just walked in. She wanted to show me her nails. So in that sense, the way we set up the curriculum is do it as a group, support each other, build relationships, move your money. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way for people who aren't ready to jump into public action to take some action and feel like they're engaged. And hopefully it will help pull them into the larger movement as they learn more and more about what's going on. Does that make sense?
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
John,
Over time.
John, did you have something?
Yeah, we are over time. So just really quickly, so I worked at JP Morgan Chase for about 15 years. And so to Jean's question, the big four banks are different. They have these places are very siloed. They have lines of business that do very different things. And one of those things that you see at the really big banks are what are called capital markets focused parts of the bank. So it's investment bankers, it's people who arrange financing, who advise diversified oil companies, everybody in the fossil fuels industry about how to go about funding their business. And they do it for a fee, and it's very lucrative. And sometimes they're putting their own capital in the deals, but most of the time they're arranging funding for fill in the blank in the oil and gas. So my point is the big four banks are different. So you might very well see smaller banks having some exposure to the oil and gas sector, but the big four they make it happen, if that makes sense.
Drivers. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, if I could jump in here, our group has done a fair amount of research, and you're right, there are, it's a range of investments, and the big banks are by far the largest targets and the most important to try to move. That said, some of these smaller banks just don't have the bandwidth to even get involved in this kind of thing. They don't offer the services, and they don't have the capacity. So we have the curriculum talks about how to assess a bank and a credit union, what to look for. We're building out directories that help people know like where to look and what to look for. I mean, it's a really comprehensive curriculum. We have a credit card directory that's being launched. We have an insurance directory that's being launched, and we're going in and looking like, where is your investment? And, even in some that, you think are good, you realize maybe they have a little bit, or they're holding money for somebody who's doing investing. And so we also challenge people not to like throw the baby out with the bathwater. If it's a difference between, investing with Chase or Wells Fargo versus investing with a smaller bank that may be holding some investments, it's not something they're directly doing. So making sure that people aren't just saying categorically, I'm not going to have anything to do with that bank, because in a lot of other ways, they're doing a ton of good, way more good than these big banks. But the curriculum goes into all of that, thankfully.
That's a great resource, I think. And I think it's obvious to this audience, but the big four are B of A, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, and Citibank. And there are, Gene, like, if you're concerned about technology, for example, Ally Bank. I mean, there are some banks that still have a national footprint.
Right.
That refund ATM charges. I mean, so there is a range.
Yeah, that's actually one of the ones I'm looking at.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then local credit unions. I mean, a lot of people believe in them because of their local focus. But again, I'm just repeating now, but the big four are different. And so if you're going to make one move, I would suggest moving away from any of those big four is kind of the most impactful thing you could do. Goldman Sachs, although you can't, they're not a bank, but there's some other players as well that are big in the oil and gas space.
Yeah, that's great. That's very helpful. Thanks, John.
Sure.
All right. I just want to thank Amy for speaking and leading this.
Thanks, Amy.
Yes. It was
Thank you.
wonderful. What a good discussion. And you will be receiving the information that you heard today and that you saw today, because we will be sending a backup email. So the recording will be on here and all the links from the chat. So you can look at those again and pass them on.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Next month, we will be having this roundtable at 6:30 instead of 5:30. And it's the last Tuesday in July.
Great.
Okay.
Bye.
Good
Have a
night.
good one. Enjoy the hot weather.
Yeah, stay cool, everybody.
That's right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All
Thank you.
Asheville finally got it.
If all of you who are on the coordinating
Bye,
committee
Amy.
could just hang on for a little.